Characteristics of gem-like men and women. In-depth analysis of human relationships. Greetings, respected listeners. Today, I would like to share with you an in-depth analysis of gem-like character that forms the core of human relationships. In modern society, the quality of relationships has become one of the most important factors determining our quality of life. Yet paradoxically, as communication technology advances, genuine relationships seem to become increasingly rare. In this lecture, I will explore the characteristics of valuable relationships from an academic perspective, particularly analyzing the traits of gem-like men and gem-like women. This will not be simple dating advice, but a comprehensive discourse encompassing psychological, sociological, and philosophical aspects of human interaction. Chapter 1. The Dilemma of Modern Relationships. The relational dilemma of modern society stems, paradoxically, from an excess of choices. In the age of social media and dating apps, we have numerous connections, but lack deep relationships. This is the so-called paradox of choice. Psychologist Barry Schwartz argued in his research that too many options actually diminish our satisfaction. Modern relationship seeking, like trying to find a real gem among countless pebbles, often leads to judgments based on superficial characteristics. What's interesting here is how this behavior is interpreted from an evolutionary psychology perspective. Some evolutionary psychologists argue that human mating strategies are optimized for survival and reproduction. However, I believe this is just one academic perspective, insufficient to explain the full spectrum of human relationships. Humans are complex beings with spiritual, moral, and cultural dimensions beyond mere biological existence. So what is a truly valuable relationship? It is perhaps one that promotes mutual growth, based on mutual respect and trust. Now let's examine these gem-like characteristics in detail. Chapter 2. Characteristics of a gem-like man. The first characteristic of a gem-like man is integrity, the consistency between words and actions. This goes beyond simply not lying. It means internal coherence where one's values align with one's actions. As Socrates said, "Wisdom begins in acknowledging what you do not know. A person who acknowledges their limitations and keeps promises forms the foundation of trust." Interestingly, modern psychological research shows that integrity is one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction. Of course, many in the world present false appearances for short-term gain. They're like Hollywood sets, nothing behind the glamorous facade. Cynically speaking, don't put too much faith in the perfect image shown during early dating. A real gem doesn't lose its luster over time. The second characteristic is emotional maturity. This ability, also called emotional intelligence or EQ, includes recognizing and regulating one's emotions and empathizing with others' feelings. An emotionally mature man maintains composure in conflict situations and seeks understanding and resolution, rather than blame or defense. They use expressions like "I feel" instead of "you made me." In modern society, men's emotional expression is often still limited. Outdated notions like "men shouldn't cry" have caused many men to suppress their emotions. Yet, paradoxically, true strength lies not in hiding emotions, but in expressing them healthily. From a somewhat cynical perspective, a relationship with an emotionally immature person is like walking through a minefield. True intimacy is difficult to form in the anxiety of not knowing when an explosion might occur. The third characteristic is responsibility and self-management ability. This refers to the ability to manage various aspects of one's life in a balanced way: career, finances, health, relationships, and so on. French existentialist philosopher Sartre said, "Man is the sum of his choices." A responsible man takes accountability for his choices and seeks solutions rather than blaming others when difficulties arise. In modern society, there's an increase in Peter Pan syndrome. adults who physically mature but remain emotionally and socially childlike. Behind this phenomenon lies a psychology that avoids responsibility. Interestingly, one of the simplest ways to identify a responsible person is to observe their reaction when they make a mistake. The future will be very different for someone who asks, "It was my fault. How can I fix it?" versus someone who asks, "Why does this happen to me?" The fourth characteristic is supporting the partner's growth. This means not just cheering on the other's dreams, but providing practical support in their growth process. According to educational psychologist Carol Dweck's growth mindset theory, people who believe human abilities and intelligence can develop through effort achieve greater accomplishments. Someone who truly supports their partner's growth has this growth mindset and helps their partner develop it too. From a somewhat cynical perspective, one reason many relationships fail is that one partner fears the other's growth. This attitude, like trying to keep a bird caged, ultimately kills the relationship's vitality. The fifth characteristic is healthy self-esteem. Someone who knows how to love and respect themselves can maintain a healthy balance in relationships. According to psychologist Erik Erikson's psychosocial development theory, a healthy self-identity is a prerequisite for forming intimate relationships. Someone who doesn't properly know and love themselves will struggle to experience true intimacy in relationships with others. In modern society, many tend to measure their worth by external validation, likes, follower counts, etc. This is like building a house on sand. Everything collapses when external conditions change. Somewhat cynically, people with low self-esteem often look for a savior. But the moment you believe someone else is responsible for your happiness, you've already given up your own power. Healthy relationships form between two whole individuals. The sixth characteristic is family orientation. This goes beyond simply wanting marriage or children. It's an attitude that understands and accepts one's role and responsibilities within the community of family. Sociological research shows that strong family bonds positively affect individual psychological stability and social adaptation. Studies particularly show that a father's active participation significantly impacts children's cognitive, emotional, and social development. Of course, the definition of family is becoming more diverse in modern society. The traditional nuclear family model is not the only form. However, regardless of form, commitment and responsibility to community remain important values. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many want a wedding, but aren't prepared for married life. It's like wanting to reach a mountain peak while skipping the journey. Yet the true reward of a relationship is found in that journey. The seventh characteristic is spiritual foundation and principles. This includes a deep understanding of life's purpose and meaning, and ethical principles beyond simple religious belief. Philosopher Viktor Frankl argued in his book Man's Search for Meaning that the search for meaning is humanity's most basic motivation. A person with spiritual foundation lives for greater purpose and meaning beyond simply pursuing pleasure or power. In modern society, the word spirituality is often misunderstood. However, true spirituality means sincere exploration of life's fundamental questions. Who am I? Logically, how should I live? Rather than dogmatic beliefs. From a slightly cynical perspective, a person without principles is like a ship without a compass, changing direction with every wind. In contrast, a person with firm spiritual foundation doesn't lose direction even in storms. Chapter 3. Characteristics of a gem-like woman. The first characteristic of a gem-like woman is warmth and empathy. This goes beyond simple kindness to truly understanding and caring for others' emotions and needs. Psychologist Daniel Goleman argued in his book Emotional Intelligence that empathy is key to successful relationships and leadership. Empathy isn't just listening to others, but the ability to see the world from their perspective. In modern society, strength and independence are often emphasized to the point where gentleness and consideration are seen as weaknesses. However, true strength comes from the courage to acknowledge vulnerability and connect with others. Somewhat cynically, digital age communication is often superficial. Attempting to express deep emotions with a single emoji is like trying to measure an ocean with a teaspoon. True empathy requires time and attention. The second characteristic is authenticity and transparency. This means expressing thoughts and feelings without pretense and having the courage to acknowledge weaknesses and mistakes. Philosopher Immanuel Kant argued, "Telling the truth is a duty." Truthfulness goes beyond moral obligation to become the foundation for deep trust and intimacy. Interestingly, modern psychological research suggests that strategic vulnerability plays an important role in forming intimate relationships. This means sharing your weaknesses and fears at appropriate times to deepen the relationship. From a cynical perspective, we're accustomed to showing a curated self through social media, sharing only perfectly filtered photos and achievements. However, this superficial perfection actually hinders genuine connection. Often, the most attractive people are the most authentic. The third characteristic is seeking growth-oriented partnership. This means aiming for relationships that simultaneously promote the growth of oneself and one's partner. According to psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory, humans experience greatest satisfaction when experiencing appropriate challenge and growth. Growth-oriented partners provide each other with such challenges and support. In modern society, relationships often lose balance between stability and growth. Excessive stability leads to stagnation. Excessive change leads to chaos. Healthy relationships maintain balance between these elements. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many say, "Love me as I am," while demanding constant change from their partners. However, a truly growth-oriented partnership is reciprocal. You must be prepared to change as much as you expect your partner to change. The fourth characteristic is healthy self-esteem and emotional independence. This means the ability to find your value from within, rather than depending on external validation or relationships. According to psychologist Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, self-actualization is the highest level of human needs. Someone with healthy self-esteem doesn't try to fill their deficiencies through relationships, but shares their already fulfilled self. In modern society, we often see the phenomenon called relationship addiction, a state of completely depending on relationships for one's worth and happiness. However, such dependency ultimately hinders forming healthy relationships. Somewhat cynically, low self-esteem often accompanies high drama. A relationship demanding constant confirmation and recognition is like trying to continually charge an emotionally depleted battery. In contrast, a relationship with emotionally independent people is like a Vesica Pisces formed by two complete circles meeting, intersecting while maintaining their wholeness. The fifth characteristic is balance between flexibility and principles. This means having flexibility to adapt to situations while maintaining firmness in core values and principles. Philosopher Aristotle saw the golden mean as the essence of virtue, finding the appropriate balance point between two extremes. Problems arise from being either too rigid or too unprincipled. In modern psychology, this is called psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt to changing situations while choosing actions aligned with one's values. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many feel confused between principled life and flexible life. Sometimes they lean toward a postmodern perspective where everything is relative, other times toward a dogmatic perspective, asserting absolute truth. True wisdom lies in finding balance between these extremes. The sixth characteristic is spiritual roots and right faith. This means recognizing and seeking connection with a deeper dimension of reality beyond the material world. Religious sociologist Peter Berger defined humans as homo religiosus, or religious humans, meaning humans have an instinctive tendency to seek transcendent beings or meanings. In modern society, as skepticism toward institutionalized religion deepens, there's a tendency to pursue spirituality without religion, or religion without spirituality. However, regardless of form, recognizing the spiritual dimension of humans enables a more holistic understanding of life. Somewhat cynically, many seek spiritual experiences while avoiding the changes and commitments they require. It's like wanting weight loss results without exercising. However, true spiritual growth is a journey that transforms one's entire life. The seventh characteristic is the ability to find happiness in everyday life. This ability means discovering joy and meaning in ordinary moments, not in glamorous events or great achievements. Positive psychology founder Martin Seligman suggested that true happiness consists of three elements: hedonic pleasure, engagement, and meaning. Particularly, meaning and engagement are key elements of sustained happiness. In modern society, happiness is often believed to be connected with special experiences or achievements. Social media reinforces this perception. However, research shows that the most lasting happiness often comes from the most ordinary moments: family meals, conversations with friends, routine walks, etc. From a cynical perspective, many are caught in the illusion they'll be happy next, when I achieve this goal, when I buy this thing, when I meet this person. But this is like chasing the horizon. The goal always remains the same distance away, no matter how far you advance. True happiness is in the now, not the next. Chapter 4. Dynamics of Ideal Relationships. So far, we've examined the individual characteristics of gem-like men and women. However, a relationship is not simply the sum of two individuals, but a special dynamic formed between them. Now let's look at how these characteristics interact to form healthy, growing relationships. The first dynamic of a healthy relationship is the cycle of mutual respect and recognition. Respect goes beyond simple courtesy to acknowledging the other's unique identity, boundaries, and values. According to social psychologist John Gottman's research, successful relationships have a ratio of positive to negative interactions of at least 5-1. This doesn't mean there's no conflict or dissatisfaction, but that such negative moments are offset by more positive moments. Interestingly, mutual respect often shows best in micro moments. A smile in the morning, asking, "How was your day?" After work, showing patience even in stressful situations. These small actions accumulate to form a culture of respect. From a cynical perspective, many put their best effort into respecting their partner early in the relationship, but this effort diminishes over time. It's like giving your best in a job interview, then gradually changing your attitude after being hired. However, true relationships develop deeper respect over time. The second dynamic is the virtuous cycle of vulnerability and trust. This means the deep trust and connection formed through sharing your true self, fears, hopes, etc. Psychologist Brené Brown defines vulnerability as the act of risking uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, and argues it's an essential element of deep connection and intimacy. Showing vulnerability is an expression of courage, not weakness. In modern society, there's often pressure to maintain a perfect image. Social media's filtered reality reinforces this tendency. Yet, paradoxically, the deepest connections form when we acknowledge and share our imperfections. From a somewhat cynical perspective, Many relationships fall into disguised vulnerability, strategic, calculated exposure, rather than genuine self-disclosure. However, such pretense eventually gets exposed, and trust collapses. True vulnerability must be unadorned and natural. The third dynamic is conflict resolution and growth opportunity. All relationships have conflict, but in healthy relationships, these conflicts are resolved constructively rather than destructively. Conflict researcher Thomas Kilmann presented 5 conflict resolution styles: avoidance, accommodation, competition, compromise, and collaboration. The collaborative approach aims to find solutions that satisfy the needs and concerns of both sides. Interestingly, the way conflict is handled predicts relationship health better than the conflict itself. Gottman's 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, are strong predictors of relationship failure. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many idealize peaceful relationships, considering all conflict harmful. However, avoiding conflict can actually accumulate bigger problems. It's like not treating a small wound, leading to worse infection. Healthy relationships don't fear conflict, but use it as an opportunity for growth. The fourth dynamic is balanced independence and dependence. This means developing healthy interdependence while respecting individual autonomy. According to psychologist Murray Bowen's concept of self-differentiation, healthy relationships form at the balance point between fusion, excessive dependence, and cutoff, excessive independence. This balance enables being together yet separate. In modern society, we often feel confused between extreme individualism and extreme communitarianism. The former manifests as only I matter, the latter as I must completely sacrifice myself for the relationship. However, healthy relationships seek balance between these extremes. From a cynical perspective, many relationships fall into fusion syndrome, 2 people becoming completely one, erasing individual identity. While it may seem romantic short-term, long-term, it creates feelings of suffocation and rebellion. True relationships involve 2 people maintaining their wholeness while deeply connecting. The fifth dynamic is pursuing shared vision and values. This means agreement on fundamental life direction and purpose beyond simply sharing hobbies or interests. In organizational psychology, the concept of shared mental models is an important factor predicting team effectiveness. Similarly, in relationships, shared vision and values provide long-term direction and decision-making standards. In modern society, compatibility is often judged based on external factors: appearance, occupation, income level, etc. However, research shows long-term relationship satisfaction is more influenced by alignment of deeper values than these surface elements. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many begin relationships with the illusion, I can change them later, ignoring fundamental value differences and believing love will solve everything. However, this is like 2 people heading to different destinations in the same car. Eventually, someone arrives somewhere they don't want to be. The sixth dynamic is continuous growth and adaptation. This means flexibility and resilience, allowing individuals and relationships to change and develop over time. According to developmental psychologist Erik Erikson's life stages theory, humans experience various developmental tasks and crises throughout life. Healthy relationships accept these changes and have the dynamics to grow together. Interestingly, longevity research identifies adaptability as a key element of successful aging, not just living long, but adapting to changing environments and situations to live meaningfully. Similarly, in relationships, continuous adaptation and growth are keys to long-term success. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many view relationships as static, expecting fairy tale endings like, we found each other, now we'll live happily ever after. However, True relationships are like constantly evolving organisms. Relationships that resist change stagnate like ponds without flowing water. The seventh dynamic is spiritual connection. This means connection beyond material and emotional dimensions at a deeper level of meaning and purpose. Religious sociologist Emile Durkheim argued through his concept of collective consciousness that shared beliefs and values strengthen social cohesion. Similarly, sharing spiritual dimensions in relationships forms deeper bonds. In modern society, we often focus on material and psychological aspects of relationships, easily overlooking the spiritual dimension. However, in many cultures and traditions, relationships like marriage are seen as spiritual covenants beyond simple contracts or emotional bonds. From a somewhat cynical perspective, many modern relationships fall into consumerist love, viewing relationships as commodities and partners as tools to satisfy one's needs. However, true love is an act of creation, not consumption, two people creating something greater together. Chapter 5. Practical Wisdom, the Path to Gem-like Relationships. So far, we've examined the characteristics of gem-like men and women and the dynamics of ideal relationships. Now, let's explore how to apply these insights in real life. The practical wisdom. The first principle of practical wisdom is self-awareness and growth. Socrates' "Know thyself" is the starting point of all wisdom. Self-awareness means clearly understanding your strengths, weaknesses, values, fears, desires, etc. This involves developing through continuous reflection and feedback, beyond simple self-analysis. According to psychologist Carol Dweck's research, people with a growth mindset believe their abilities and personality can develop. They see failure as a learning opportunity and don't fear challenges. Practically, some methods for self-awareness include: first, having regular self-reflection time. Second, seeking honest feedback from trustworthy people. Third, recording your emotional and behavioral patterns. And fourth, listening to your inner voice through spiritual practices like meditation or prayer. The Bible provides much wisdom about the importance of self-awareness. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." This emphasizes how inner state affects external life. The second principle is intentional relationship formation. This means developing relationships with clear intention and purpose, not leaving them to chance or emotion alone. Anthropologist Helen Fisher describes love as a synchronized brain system, arguing it goes beyond simple emotion to include choice and action. True love is a combination of emotional response and conscious decision. Practical methods for intentional relationship formation include: first, clarifying your relationship values and goals. Second, observing potential partners' character and values over time. Third, interacting in various situations to assess compatibility. Fourth, setting appropriate boundaries according to relationship development stages. And fifth, regularly discussing relationship direction and health. The Bible emphasizes the importance of intentional choice in relationships. 1 Corinthians 13 explains love's essence, showing it's not just emotion but conscious choices and actions of patience, kindness, truthfulness, etc. The third principle is effective communication. This means communicating in ways that deepen understanding and connection, not just having many conversations. Communication expert Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication model suggests 4 elements: observation, feeling, need, and request. This approach helps express your perspective without blame or judgment and understand others' needs. Practical methods for effective communication include: first, active listening, trying to understand the emotions and needs behind words, not just content. Second, using I messages, starting with "I feel" rather than you always. Third, paying attention to nonverbal communication, recognizing messages conveyed through tone, expression, posture, etc. Fourth, asking open questions. Questions that explore thoughts and feelings more deeply, rather than yes/no questions. And fifth, having regular conversation time, securing time for deep conversation amid daily busyness. The Bible provides much wisdom about communication importance and methods. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." James 1:19 advises, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." The fourth principle is conflict resolution skills. Conflict is inevitable in all relationships, but how it's handled can either weaken or strengthen the relationship. Conflict researcher Joseph Folger argues that conflict is actually an opportunity for transformation. That is, conflict can be a channel leading to deeper understanding and connection. Practical methods for conflict resolution include: first, having cooling off periods, pausing conversation when emotions run high. Second, focusing on the problem, concentrating on the specific current problem, not the other's personality or past behavior. Third, finding common ground, starting with aspects you can agree on to find solutions. Fourth, maintaining an attitude of compromise and negotiation, recognizing not all conflicts need to end in win-lose. And fifth, seeking professional help when needed, considering counselor or therapist help for serious or recurring conflicts. The Bible provides wise teachings on conflict resolution. Matthew 18:15-17 presents a step-by-step approach to resolving conflicts. Romans 12:18 exhorts, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." The fifth principle is continuous investment and recreation. All relationships change and develop over time. It's important to accept these changes and continuously breathe new vitality into the relationship. Psychologist John Gottman proposed the concept of an emotional bank account for successful relationships. Positive interactions are deposits, negative interactions are withdrawals, and healthy relationships maintain sufficient savings. Practical methods for continuous investment and recreation include: first, valuing small daily moments, making special the small moments of daily life. Greetings, farewells, mealtimes, etc. Second, sharing new experiences, experiencing new activities, places, challenges together beyond routine. Third, celebrating each other's growth, rejoicing in and celebrating personal development and achievements together. Fourth, creating relationship rituals and traditions, developing meaningful ways to commemorate special days, anniversaries, etc. And fifth, expressing gratitude and recognition, specifically thanking each other for efforts and contributions. The Bible emphasizes the importance of continuous investment in relationships. Ephesians 5:25-33 encourages loving each other as Christ loved the church, including continuous sacrifice and dedication. The sixth principle is relationships within community. Healthy relationships don't exist in a vacuum, but flourish within broader communities and social networks. Sociologist Emile Durkheim argued that social integration is essential for individual well-being and stability. Similarly, healthy relationships grow better within broader support systems: family, friends, mentors, spiritual communities, etc. Practical methods for relationships within community include: first, finding models of healthy relationships, learning from senior couples with respectable relationships. Second, building support networks, finding friends, family, mentors who can encourage and support your relationship. Third, investing in relationship education. Improving relationship skills through workshops, seminars, books, etc. Fourth, interacting with other couples, sharing experiences and wisdom with people in various relationship stages. And fifth, serving community together, building experience, cooperating for greater purposes through service together. The Bible emphasizes community importance. Hebrews 10:24-25 says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more, as you see the day approaching." The seventh principle is spiritual foundation and transcendent perspective. This means viewing relationships beyond mere human dimensions in the context of deeper purpose and meaning. Theologian Paul Tillich defined love as the power that reunites the separated. From this perspective, love is understood as part of the universe's basic connection principle, beyond simple emotion or choice. Practical methods for spiritual foundation and transcendent perspective include: first, practicing spirituality together, connecting spiritually through praying, meditating, reading scriptures together, etc. Second, finding greater purpose, exploring deeper meaning and purpose of relationship beyond simple happiness or satisfaction. Third, cultivating gratitude habits, developing attitudes, recognizing and appreciating daily blessings and gifts. Fourth, practicing forgiveness, walking together through forgiveness processes to move beyond past hurts. And fifth, maintaining transcendent perspective, viewing temporary difficulties or conflicts as part of a greater journey. The Bible provides deep insights into relationships' spiritual dimensions. 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, "Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three strands is not quickly broken," emphasizing the strength of relationships centered on God. Chapter 6, Conclusion: The Journey of Gem-like Relationships. Through this audiobook, we've explored the characteristics of gem-like men and women, the dynamics of ideal relationships, and the wisdom to practice these. Finally, I want to integrate all this content to present a big picture of the journey toward gem-like relationships. 1. Relationship is a journey, not a destination. The first thing we must remember is that perfect relationships don't exist. Relationships aren't static states, but journeys continuously developing and growing. Philosopher Martin Buber said, "All real life is meeting." Relationship isn't simply having, but becoming. Through daily choices and actions, we continuously create and recreate our relationships. Modern society often promises immediate satisfaction and perfect matches. However, truly meaningful relationships form through time, patience, and commitment. Just as diamonds form through millions of years of pressure and heat, gem-like relationships shine through time and challenges. The Bible supports this perspective of gradual growth. Mark 4:26-29's parable of the growing seed teaches that God's kingdom grows slowly, often invisibly. Similarly, gem-like relationships form gradually through daily small choices and actions. 2. Relationships from a biblical perspective. The Bible provides rich wisdom and insight about human relationships. From a Christian perspective, relationships have spiritual dimensions beyond psychological and social phenomena. In Genesis 2:18, God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." This shows relationships are a core part of human existence. In John 15:12-13, Jesus said, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." This teaches that true love includes self-sacrifice and commitment. Ephesians 5:21 admonishes, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." This shows healthy relationships are based on mutual respect and humility. From a biblical perspective, the ultimate model of a gem-like relationship is the relationship between Christ and the Church. This includes unconditional love, forgiveness, commitment, and growth. 3. Beyond perfectionism, space for grace and growth. One big misconception about relationships is they must be perfect. However, truly gem-like relationships center on authenticity and growth, not perfection. Psychologist Brené Brown said, "Vulnerability is not weakness. It is our most accurate measurement of courage. The courage to acknowledge your imperfections and love despite them is the core of true intimacy." The Bible emphasizes this perspective of grace. Romans 3:23-24 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus." Similarly, in relationships, we grow through grace and forgiveness for each other, not through perfection. Practically, this means, first, accepting mistakes and failures as growth opportunities. Second, not having unrealistic expectations for yourself or your partner. Third, prioritizing understanding and empathy over critical judgment. Fourth, making forgiveness a central value of relationship. And fifth, aiming for a healthily growing relationship, not a perfect one. Finally, I'd like to pose an important question as we conclude this audiobook. Are we looking for gems, or are we becoming gems? Many people focus on finding the perfect partner, but what's truly important is what kind of person you're becoming. Gem-like relationships form between gem-like people. Ultimately, the journey toward gem-like relationships begins within, not externally. When we embody values like love, truth, respect, and growth, we attract people with those values and form meaningful relationships with them. Philippians 2:3-4 admonishes, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests but each of you to the interests of the others." This attitude becomes the foundation of truly gem-like relationships. Closing remarks. Respected listeners, this concludes the audiobook on characteristics of gem-like men and women. Thank you sincerely for your time. I hope today's content brings a small light to your life and relationships. Perfect relationships don't exist, but through daily small choices and efforts, we can grow toward healthier, more meaningful relationships. As the Bible's wisdom tells us, the answer to all questions lies ultimately in God, the source of true love. 1 John 4:7-8 says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love." Finally, I would appreciate your interest in other content on this channel. Through subscriptions, likes, and comments, you can share your thoughts and experiences, leading to richer conversations. I look forward to meeting you in the next audiobook. Thank you.